Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Iron and Blood, Warriors of Ravenloft, for the PlayStation 1. In the section of the video game hobby where fighting games rule, there are the obvious superstars, the Street Fighters, the Mortal Kombats, the Fatal Fury games. But on the climb to the top of that mountain is a heap of contenders and wannabes that could never, nor would never, achieve even a tenth of that notoriety. We're going to drag one of those broken bodies back into the light for the brief autopsy it deserves. Iron and Blood, Warriors of Ravenloft, we need to talk. For much of the 1990s, competitive fighting games ran the show at both local arcade scenes as well as the exploding console market. 2D sprite-based games were typical, but 3D was making its presence known in games like Killer Instinct and Tekken. And as quickly as these major properties were created, they were being ported to home console. And just as many companies were making fighting games directly for home console, hoping to cash in on that lucrative market share. In 1996, Take-Two Interactive, the very same owner of 2K Games and Rockstar Games, decided to throw their hat into the 3D fighting game ring for home consoles with an unusual prospect: a truly fantasy-based fighting game. Instead of creating their own property, they decided to contact a little company called TSR, the original creator company that owned and operated the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game, before the company and license were bought by Wizards of the Coast, the Magic the Gathering card game creators. Have I shown my geek credentials enough yet? Take-Two wanted to create something dark and brutal, to emulate games like Mortal Kombat. But a game where fantasy elves and dwarves and Gandalf lookalikes beat each other up simply would not do. Did TSR have anything that would fit their vision? In fact, they did. The tabletop gothic horror setting TSR had created and named Ravenloft, where vampires and werewolves, ghosts and ghouls, swanned about for all eternity, lamenting the evils they had visited upon others, while writhing in an unending hell of their own creation. Sounds metal as fuck, and I should know. I've run the setting myself for many years for several role-playing groups. But is it fighting game worthy? Well, let's discuss that. Ravenloft is a setting where individual small nations are ruled by Dark Lords, villains and monsters of such magnitude that the forces that govern the multiverse have decided that they need to be locked away and made to suffer. They are given their own lands, which they cannot leave, and those lands are filled with all sorts of victims and horrors, and many times, the hapless adventurers who got stuck as well. The story of Iron and Blood is that two Dark Lords get annoyed with each other, but cannot go to war, as their curses do not allow them to leave their domains. One Dark Lord is the classic Dracula knockoff named Strahd von Zarovich, who most recently was the star of the Curse of Strahd role-playing adventure. The other is an undead anti-paladin named Lord Soth. Instead of sending their forces to clash uselessly, they decide to settle their differences through a proxy battle. You see, a group of adventurers, including the classic paladin, wizard, thief, cleric, and the like, had stumbled into Strahd's land and confronted the Dark Lord in an effort to be set free and go home. Instead of killing them outright, Strahd hires them to fight in a lineup against Lord Soth's assassins, an axe-wielding executioner, a werewolf, a goblin, a skeleton, and other wacky fighters, each meant to be scary but coming off as goofy instead. The idea is that whichever side kills the other, and of course whoever is left of those teams, wins and gets to go home or complete their mission. Or so we are led to believe. I bought this game because I'm a fan of the setting and a long-time role-playing game master and storyteller. But I will be the first to admit I'm outright bad at fighting games. There are plenty of content creators in the video game sphere that can tell you all about the ins and outs of fighting games, like frame rate timing, combos, reversals, and all that happy horse shit. But even as someone who button mashes their way to victory, I can tell you this game sucks. If you weren't outright told who the good guys and bad guys were, it would be very hard to tell otherwise, as the character models look similar and act like paper dolls attempting ballet. The controls are harsh and mostly unresponsive, and the special attacks are cumbersome and difficult to perform. And the whole plot, if you can call it that, is utter nonsense. Not that players usually play fighting games for the story, but having one, at least a decent one, can help elevate a so-so game to much better status. And that didn't happen here. Worse, I'm not sure I ever beat the game. I know I played both rosters of characters and defeated the other side, but after that the game just sort of ends. A basic congratulations screen, and that's it. No story about the victors, no conclusion, just over. The long-standing rumor is that should you somehow perform exceptionally well at the game, you could unlock the true final ending by finding the rival team's Dark Lord, either Strahd or Soth, but I never accomplished this. I don't even know how to. With no evidence to the contrary, I must assume that the screen captures in the few gaming rags that discuss this game upon its debut used doctored photo stills. Come at me, game conspiracy theorists. Prove me wrong here. Iron and Blood Warriors of Ravenloft is just such a fucking disaster of a game that it's not worth anyone's time other than a few laughs during a game night with your buddies, or as an oddity of the fighting game genre. It does a disservice to the property it was based on and the company who made it, as well as the fighting game genre as a whole. Is it the worst fighting game ever? Maybe not, but it certainly didn't do anything good either. It just made me mad, but I guess that's why I remembered it. You did us all dirty here, Take-Two, although I'm to understand that's hardly unusual for your company. It's for the best that this one was dropped off in the dustbin of history. No amount of D&D magic could save this game from its fate. Thank you for listening.